Hello everyone, welcome to another Car Design News live stream, which is brought to you today with our partner Linkage Design. I'm Freddie Holmes, I'm the Deputy Editor here at Car Design News, and today we'll be exploring all things Alias and VRED, plus how Linkage Design can help you and your teams implement those tools more efficiently. We're also going to hear about the partnership between Linkage and Autodesk, and learn a bit more about the broader solutions between Linkage Design and Mechdyne. Now, I'm pleased to say that I'm joined by Phil Botley, who is the product manager at Linkage Design, and I'm sure many of you know Phil already. Phil will get us started in just a moment. Before that, a quick note on the Q&A. We will have some audience questions at the end to close out the session, so get thinking. You can send in those at any time during the session, just using the Q&A box on your screen. With that, I'll hand over to our expert speaker, Phil, to get us started. Phil, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Freddie. Aha, we're on. Let me just share my screen. Bear with me 2 seconds, everyone. Hold on. Share screen. Right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're well. Phil Botley here, product manager at Linkage. Thanks for the intro, Freddie. Some of you may recall me from presentations before or Car Design News webinars I've done before, but I'm here again. Some bad news, first of all. Well, not bad news, sad news. Normally people tune in not to see me or to see the great software that is Alias and VRED, but actually to see Lottie, our four-legged furry friend. Unfortunately, she's decided to go to the Peak District today with her friends. I don't know why. She'd rather go and chase rabbits instead of learning about Alias and VRED. But Lottie's not here today, so I'm afraid it's just me bumbling on about about all this good stuff. But it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk to you again after a while. First of all, thanks to Rainer and the guys at Genesis for allowing us to use their car for the promotional material. It's a car that everyone recognises. We've used it in demos for a while, but Rainer was very generous, to allow us to use this to kind of get everyone to attend. So thank you once again, Rainer, much appreciated. And I'll catch up with you in a few months' time, no doubt, in Darmstadt. Thanks for that. So, without further ado, I've got a kind of a packed agenda here today, and I'm going to try and kind of run through a lot of information to kind of show what Linkage is, first of all, what we do. Secondly, what my role is here and what I'm doing, kind of to support software, support customers, and to support Autodesk, also work with Autodesk. And also, to begin to manage certain products that we're developing, and I'll give you an insight into a couple of those tools also. Then, of course, the main thing, we'll look at 2026.1 and 2026.2 Alias and VRED, and what's new. Again, there's so much in these tools, particularly Alias. It's a big release, and I'll talk about that later on. But this is just like a subset of what's in there. So I would, once you've seen these presentations, I'd encourage you to go and, if you haven't already, download the software, look at the online material, and really kind of absorb, the enhancements and features and really significant capabilities that are in these tools. It's really quite mind blowing what the teams have put in for this dot release, especially for Alias. And then talk about how we work with customers. What we're doing. From a training perspective, some of you may be aware of our Screen to Machine initiative, which we're collaborating with Autodesk on in the States, and I'll go into what that is and how we're rolling that out. Kind of go back to basics from a training perspective to how we're rolling out globally. What we're doing to connect the pipeline, right? In terms of on site and in studios, how are we connecting tools together? How are we doing them in a very modern way, right? Very much a kind of an API first way, so we can actually speed up the process and create the code and sort of deploy it in multiple domains, right? On site, on premise or on cloud, and potentially, not potentially, but actually as a SaaS component as well, to really speed up your process and connect the end to end from the concept right the way through to engineering. Then also, introduce you to Mechdyne, right? So Linkage is owned by Mechdyne. It's a Mechdyne company, but Mechdyne is a company that people probably use their facilities and capabilities day in, day out, but probably don't realize that you do. And what we're doing from that perspective at very much an enterprise level to redefine how we visualize and interact with data, how we can empower all customers, and whether it be a manager, a chief exec, or even just a modeler, perhaps a clay modeler, understand and visualize data easily without having to be an expert in that experience. And then we'll have a series of questions and answers. So standard format. So introduction, really, first of all, who are Linkage? Who are we? What do we do? We have a variety of different business areas, right? So I'm going to really focus on maybe for the first part, tools and training. So we're going to look at software, and we're going to look at the training, going to look at what we do from a development perspective, and also gear in terms of hardware. So from a software perspective, we're an Autodesk reseller. We're expanding where we can sell these tools, and that means we all know how resellers work, right? It's essentially a partner. We do deliver training, we deliver software, we do best practice transfer, and we can support a whole raft of tools. The tools that you'd imagine we support: Alias, VRED, bits of Fusion, and everything. But we can also begin to, because we're very much from a consulting background, we can begin to implement these quite effectively on customer sites. So roll out, multi-year training programs if need to, scale with consulting resources to backfill project gaps. So it kind of is beginning to become a one-stop shop where you can kind of get your software, your support, your training, your hardware, your consulting services, your development, etc., etc. And that's the vision with which we're kind of moving the company forward to really become the key systems integrator for the digital design space for Alias and VRED globally, both in direct accounts and also in other accounts. Of course, because we work in the studio, we have to be conversant with tools that sort of are used alongside Alias and VRED. So we have domain experience in supporting tools like Blender up front in the process, other rendering packages as well. And so we can begin to then have a very honest conversation about how we can improve customers' processes, optimize processes, move Alias into earlier in the process, use it where it's applicable, use Blender where it's applicable, etc. So we begin to have a very mature conversation with our customers who we've been working with, myself and obviously the Linkage team for many, many years. And Linkage is staffed by a lot of ex-Alias people from the SGI days back in the day. So we've got a long history of understanding that space. From a training perspective, as we said, we can deliver training, bespoke training, classroom training, virtual training, quite complex training when you're migrating legacy tools. We'll talk about that in a moment. And we can really begin to cater for the new starters or the expert users, to people who just want to learn how to use, the new reform capability in Alias or whatever. So we can be very targeted with what we're doing with our training. So it's not really a kind of a standard recipe. We can change it and we can adapt it per customer and per industry. As we said, we have a development arm which we are using to develop capability and components, and I'll talk about some of that. Some of that I can't talk about, mostly the AI stuff I can't mention, but we can talk about what we're doing really from a tools perspective in a kind of an Alias and in this particular case, a Blender perspective, how we're combining the two. But we create a lot of capabilities for customers, bespoke capabilities. It allows us to go quickly and actually create plugins to plug into the tools to make them more effective. So we have a development house that we can call on should we need to go faster or address specific sort of gaps perhaps in customers' processes, and we can plug them with the tools. As well as that, we're obviously conversant in how we set up a Vario or a Vision Pro or whatever on site, whether it be with, Norton Motorbikes in the UK or Lucid in America or whatever. We kind of are pretty conversant, as you'd imagine, about how we set up the XR tools with VRED and how we can actually begin to run these design reviews across teams globally, across sectors. And as well as headsets, the Mechdyne component also do power walls, right? And part of our role is to actually suggest which display capability is suitable for which application, right? Put on a headset, have a look around the car, that's cool, job done, put it down. Or if you want a big design review, potentially where you perhaps you don't want to wear a headset, and you want to, it's on a cave with maybe 20 people around, sorry, a power wall with 20 people around, then you can sort of merge those two and combine those two quite easily. And of course, we work quite closely with customers, as you'd imagine, whether it be some futuristic tech, or whether it be just our bread and butter, such as the well-known automotive customers on the West Coast, or here in the UK, or in Germany, or elsewhere. So that's kind of what we do from a software, and I mentioned it's kind of a one-stop shop, right? That's the linkage, the vision behind it. As well as that, we find that we can also offer our services because we use the software day in, day out, and because we've been able to do projects for customers. There might be a kind of a peak in demand, and maybe the OEM can't deliver that. Because we're there with the software and the training, we can also begin to put teams on site to temporarily backfill those project gaps, but also specific teams with specific skill sets to do certain particular jobs, whether that be visualization, whether that be migration from legacy Class A to Alias, etc. We can really kind of dovetail and match a kind of a perfect offering of software, services, and training to that people. And we provide these capabilities in a variety of areas. For example, surfacing, whether it be the eVTOL space, which is really taking off, no pun intended, in that space, all the way from concept to Class A, as you'd imagine, or entering service release. There's, of course, this is all examples of our work that we've done for customers. This case of 150. How do we create those really cool visualizations and animations for marketing or for sign off? Interiors also, and then also some of our customers, we kind of work with most people that everyone knows here, right? Whether it be providing software, providing training, and we'll see the training later on, or providing the services. So really quite a kind of holistic approach, right? People don't have to take anything. People might just want software. People might just want training. People might just want us to code a couple of plugins or connect Alias to Team Center or whatever. But those are the offerings which we are beginning to expand and roll out globally and have these discussions with customers. So our approach really is to, understand what the key technologies are that are evolving the digital design process, whether that be hybrid modeling, sub-D, NURBS, meshes, all the way to engineering, whether that be experience. We're moving away from the idea of static visualization, as we all know, into how do you experience a model, all the way through to XR. Cloud and platform is critically important now to allow to be in constant communication. Design automation is key also, if we can actually speed up those tools. AI, as we all know, is beginning to impact the design, whether it be upfront or whether it be allowing you to make faster decisions based on knowledge. So you can, for example, from an analysis perspective, to make informed decisions with as quickly as possible, so you can move on to the next stage of the design process, or even AI, API scripting and accessibility. So these are some of the technologies that we are discussing with customers and have been for decades, I'd suggest. But we're beginning to convert these into benefits for customers, right? Which is really critical. You can have this technology, but how does a customer get benefit from that? And how does that improve their business? So, how do we connect the tools? How do we improve the digital design process to get the data flowing seamlessly from sketch all the way through to engineering release into production and manufacture as efficiently as possible? Connecting the tools is quite critical. How do we connect the physical with the virtual? How do we have a concept of a virtual digital twin, so we can always be in touch and we can always actually understand where we are in the hardware bill of materials and also the software bill of materials? Insights, of course. XR isn't just really about understanding what we're doing. It's insights into design, where we are in the maturity of the design, but also allowing other people, non-domain experts, to actually deliver insights. Communication, as I mentioned, becomes more important as we globally connect. And of course, going into knowledge and prediction, these are really the key areas which will really transform and speed up the digital design process, as well as the connected part and connecting the tools. The faster we can make decisions, how we can actually sort of capture knowledge and reuse knowledge throughout the company, convert data into IP, and deploy that internally becomes really, really important and mission critical as we look to speed up the design process and time to market for our customers. Customization is interesting because how do we manage customization with sort of engineering requirements, and of course ease of use. We want the ability to walk up to the software, and you've seen it over the past number of years. The Alias team and the VRED team have been doing that to make the software super accessible, super easy to use, super easy to learn and get into and to dip into and dip out of on a kind of a regular basis. So we have three main domains that we support our customers in: OEM support, direct, big company support, but also with channel customer and support. And this is what we're looking to grow also and transfer how we support and look after our OEM customers into our channel customers as well. Bring that love and bring that attention to detail into the channel, but also how can we develop software as well to plug into Alias and VRED, but also plug into capability gaps our customers have, but also accelerate the usage of our tools moving forward. And so this really breaks down into kind of three areas, super color coded by myself because I want to make things simple for you guys: training and support, systems integration, from a value-added software, but also critically accelerated development and customer driven. So that's really a position of what we do and as globally as Linkage. And actually what I do is from the Alias and VRED side, I'm kind of managing that software side globally, working with Autodesk in certain areas, with account execs here and also America. But our main bread and butter is really Alias and VRED. And you may, I'm sure you are aware that the back end of last year, Alias 2026.1 and VRED 2026.2 were released, and these are the dot releases of our software, of Alias and VRED, and they tend to be released around back end of the year as normal. So let's look at first of all Alias and what's actually in this version. And again, I have to caveat this with saying that it's one of the biggest dot releases for Alias ever, right? So there's an absolute myriad of stuff in there, almost as big as a major release. Potentially say it's a bit bigger than a major release. And just a big, well done to the PM, development, design, and CXD teams on a great job. I mean, I think really pulled out all the stops on this release, and there's some fantastic stuff in there. So I'm just going to go through a few of the great highlights in the release. There's a couple of interesting AI components which I'm going to reference, but I'll tell you how to get more information on those AI components later on. So one of the things we've been working on for a while, of course, is subdivision, and we've done some really cool enhancements to this. Sorry, the team have done some really cool enhancements to this on 2026.1. And this works around what the team have done with soft proportional modification, where we've implemented a number of features, one of which really allows us to pre-select the CVs or the geometry before we actually go into the tool, which gives us that ease of use of tool first and selection or vice versa. We've also improved some of the in canvas visualization, so we can kind of see which direction we're going in, but also color coded the CVs and the influence they have. Undo's now supported as well as history, so we can actually now undo selection. And of course, as we just saw there, we have the history visualizer, which really allows us to actually see if any CVs have history or linked history components. We can actually change the as you see now, we can actually change the size of the CVs also, and also critically now we don't have to combine the separate bodies to actually work on them. With what we've done with with those tools, we can work on independent bodies. We also have a series of enhancements in Alias, which begins to make Alias work in a similar way to other sub-D tools. Here we see a kind of a sort of symmetry align there for sub-D, which really creates a virtual piece of geometry over the center line, in this case center line, so we can actually visually see what's going on at the center line. But then with mirror duplicate, we can automatically just create that geometry automatically. We also have a way now in box mode of actually seeing which areas are selected, and obviously we can change the color. So that's a nice way of seeing which bits of geometry we've selected and which haven't. Again, a lot more in SoftProd mod than I'm showing here. Just a quick update. Staying on the sub-D theme, the team have done a really fantastic job on work on reform and kind of retopo in a kind of bracket sense. What the guys have done with this version in reform in 26.1 is allow you to begin to basically build a car automatically from character lines. So when you go into the reform tool, if you kind of select your wheel arches or a character line, then the geometry will build to those. You can also exclude geometry that you don't really want to build to, such as the wing mirror here, which you saw was kind of built around. And then by inserting character lines such as the belt line here or the lowest sill, which we'll see in a moment, you can actually then build and refine the geometry to that point. So that's a really neat way of actually creating the geometry very quickly. And we can also begin, we can actually put the limit surface directly onto the geometry. But the point being that this is a really fast way of taking some data, taking some mesh data, or as you might see later on, some Form Explorer data, and actually just sucking on a surface, 2 character lines, and then building the character line. So really super great capability in there, but also capability up front with symmetry align, symmetry align, sorry, that we kind of that exist in other tools, but we actually now have in Alias, which is pretty pretty slick, I think. Obviously, we don't work on sub-D. The guys don't work on sub-D, sorry, but there's also been a lot of work on the bread and butter tools, right? In terms of actually what we're doing on the bread and butter surfacing tools. So, for example, with trim update, we can now, with the curve trim tool, sorry, we can actually now ensure that we can keep the construction history with the original curves that we used to build that geometry, which means we can actually change the shape very, very quickly and explore the shape. And, for examples with grills or certain areas, that really gives us a lot of freedom to actually maintain that history and explore, but actually still, as you see here, can, alter the original driving curves and the actual, the resultant geometry will update, doesn't break, and it allows us to actually explore shapes and work or geometry creation. It might take hours, perhaps a day or so. We can now do very quickly and explore very quickly. We've done some enhancements, or the team have done some enhancements to curve on surface, and there are also some manipulators which have been included on some of the fillet tools, which really allows us to extend the fillets in canvas, right? So when we're building on the geometry on the lid there, it allows us to actually move it, move the fillet up from those in canvas sliders, which is pretty slick and pretty cool. I think one of my favorites here is tabs in stages, right? So those of you very simply use CATIA or use Excel, you have tabs at the top. We now have that in stages, so you can tab between them very easily from the top of the screen. So I think that's pretty slick, and it's something that we've been talking about for a while, but we've got them in 2026.1. I think that's people might not like me for saying this, but that's worth the price of admission for the software alone. I'm joking, being facetious, but it's really cool. Another interesting thing that's included in 2026.1 is native character support. We call it multi-byte, but it means actually, Alias in the file browser or for file names or certain other capabilities can actually understand Korean, sort of Chinese, Japanese, knows what an umlaut is. So we don't have those issues with file names going awry anymore, which again is pretty cool and something which is really quite significant and quite important. We've done a few enhancements for Dynamo, and 3 things I'm going to talk about. One really is making Dynamo and Alias a lot more tightly integrated, right? So to make them work a little bit closer, more effectively and efficiently together. Second one is we've improved the speed of the Dynamo player scripts, right? So you can load them or kind of store them in inverted commas in cache, so they load quicker and will work a lot faster than before. I think we've set it 5, but you can actually increase that limit. And also, the team have actually implemented the escape key. So, for example, when you're running a very complicated Dynamo script, if you press escape, then the script stops and it doesn't crash Alias or it doesn't go black like it used to. It doesn't just work for Dynamo, Dynamo scripts. It works on a multitude of other alias tools that are kind of CPU intensive, right? Take a while to process. You can now press escape to get out of them, which is pretty slick and pretty cool. And one of my, I guess, okay, trim, stage tabs, and these are probably my two favorites, I think. Directional light is now linked to an active camera. It sounds quite simple, but it's really great, right? So it means that, for example, you have a design review situation where you've got a rack of lights around the car. It means when you're moving the camera, the light effectively moves with the camera. So you kind of get this real world experience that you actually see in the studio, and that's something that we've been wanting to do for a while, which is pretty slick. We also support multiple environment support now. As you can see, we can chop and change there, and this also kind of goes into, as we'll see later on, the enhancements to live reference, which is the connection between Alias and VRED, where we can actually move not just the data but other components back and forth now. On the day-to-day modeling side for Alias, or the rendering side, sorry, we've improved. Pardon me, sorry. We've done a lot of enhancements to the speed of shader browsers, shader lister, sorry, but also in terms of what we can do to compare the different shaders. So we can actually, you can see here, drop and drag a shader onto our material balls there and see what it looked like in Alias render mode or VRED render mode. So you get a very quick impression, a very fast idea of actually what the model will look like in the scene, which is pretty cool, right? I think that's a really quite nice feature the team have implemented here, and it works quite nicely. We've also optimized what we're doing with the tessellation, global tessellation, so it improves it and it's a lot faster. And of course, we've improved playback in our animation window, so we can actually then, with the complexity of the models, have a faster level of playback and scene interaction. And there are ways to actually optimize that also moving forward. We have also, enhanced what we've done with variants, and we'll see that in the next slide also, which is pretty slick. As I mentioned before, we've launched Alias Live Reference, which is a connection between Alias and VRED, which is, if you haven't tried, you should try. It's absolutely fantastic in terms of what it does and the speed that it does. But this allows you to actually take your Alias data into VRED almost instantaneously, and any updates are kind of immediately visible in VRED. And the team have implemented a few things there, such as switch shaders, variants, environments. So if we have an environment in Alias now, it's transferred to VRED. Any variants that we may have are transferred to VRED also. So again, we're beginning to have that consistency of visual experience, day-to-day work in Alias, and then into VRED for the high-end design review and also more sophisticated rendering capabilities, which is really cool. In Alias, to actually monitor this, we've implemented a live reference information window. So you can actually see what's going on, see if there are any errors in path names, see where your reference files live, see if the directories have been set. So for example, I don't know, a link is broken. You just now go into this window, and it's like a master window for you to see, where the directories live, and if you have to do any changes or do any amendments to actually ensure that the two packages are working seamlessly together. Sorry, I'm just recovering from a bit of a cold. That's why I'm wrapped up a bit like this. Sorry if my voice goes a bit croaky. So again, live reference. If you haven't tried it, try it. I think it'll blow you away. And that, coupled with the enhancements to, well, not the enhancements to, but VRED render inside of Alias, really takes Alias and VRED to a next level, which is pretty cool. Now, two tools that I'm going to talk about, and I can't go into detail here because they're too vast to go into detail with the remaining 30 minutes we've got left, is Form Explorer and NavPack. Form Explorer is the sort of AI front end concept creation tool for Alias. You may have seen it at events before. If you want more information, go to the what's new and the help on the 2026.1 help page. And also, if you want more information about how to access this, contact your Autodesk sales representative and accountant, and he or she will get you in touch with the relevant people to begin to have a trial or whatever with it. Absolutely fantastic bit of technology, years in the making, and feeds perfectly into the reform enhancements to allow you to build geometry automatically and actually explore the shape. The second component, again, is a lot of you are aware of, is NavPack. Again, the same sort of request if you're interested in seeing how AI-based analysis capability inside your tools, inside Alias, can improve your decision making, can actually allow you to make a better informed, faster decision. Before you go into the next stage, please reach out to your account representative, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to give you an introduction. These are really game-changing capabilities for Alias, and takes it to the next level. And this is just the beginning of AI moving forward. So that was a very, very big release of Alias, right? I've just really condensed it into maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I encourage you to go to the pages. VRED is VRED because there are more releases of VRED per year, right? 2 or 3. That tends to be broken down into kind of smaller bite-sized chunks. So I'm just going to talk about maybe a couple of things in the 2026.2 version of VRED. One of the main things really is what we're doing with the enhancements to Vulkan, where we've added support for open color IO and also improved the ray tracing ambient occlusion for speed, right? So it's a lot faster and a lot quicker. From a display cluster perspective, with Vulkan, we can now see avatars and also annotations in there. So beginning to move it up to a par with the previous engine. So that's really, really cool. Again, try it out, Vulkan. It's mind blowing. It really is quite superb. We've also, the team have now also implemented sheen layer support for Substance and X-Rite, and you can see that what we can do there is we can sort of vary the weight, we can vary the color, we can vary the type of texture we get. The team have deprecated woven cloth and velvet materials. So if you have a legacy model, perhaps, that you're loading into VRED with those deprecated materials in there, you'll have an option that says, do you want them to be replaced with a plastic material with a kind of a sheen layer on there automatically. So so it does the conversion for you. So again, very, very cool, very slick, and adding that level of really great visual quality into those tools. Also in this release, there's deep learning anti-alias mode, bit of a mouthful, but this release focuses on visual quality at native resolution, but also really, uses AI in a very smart way, right, to produce, sort of detail frames without upscaling, right? So not relying on super amounts of compute to do that. It begins to to manage that process quite slickly, which is pretty cool and pretty slick. And I think you'll admit that it looks quite smart. And of course, as we saw before, we have the live reference updates. It's obviously Alias to VRED, and that seamless use. And that's one of the reasons why the team are beginning to make the products look similar, to make that user experience and that journey from one product to the other easy. I forgot to mention that curves are also now supported when you transfer them via live reference from Alias into VRED also. So some really super enhancements in 2026.2 for VRED. As I said, not as big as 2026.1 from Alias for obvious reasons, but nonetheless quite powerful and really game changing. So for more information, I'd suggest as a first pass, go to the what's new pages on the Autodesk website. Look at what's new in Alias and VRED, detailed information there, detailed videos and detailed what's news. Sign up for some training, a handy segue into something we'll talk about later on, so you can get up to speed on these software and these new tools. As always, and I always beat the drum on this, there are learning editions of these latest versions of Alias and VRED for you to download and try today. So once this webinar is over, if you haven't done so already, log in and download 2026.1 and 2026.2, yours to use for 12 months, right? And full fat versions of Alias and VRED with all these new tools and capabilities in there, so you can learn at your own pace and learn at home. So really, really great way to get into Alias and VRED also. Linked to that, there's a whole raft of training resources, right? Not just the learning hubs for the software, but the tutorials for Alias and VRED, so you can get up to speed super quickly. There's obviously, quick start guides and YouTube channels where you can get lots of handy hints. So it's not like you're downloading the software and you're not too sure where to start. Don't forget there's a new onboarding screen for the tools also, but there's a lot of material out there for you to actually use, and quite sophisticated as well, right? You can go through a whole class, you can get a certificate, it'll take you through the new tools. So again, learning at your own pace, at your own time when you want to. And there's a reason for the work that everyone's been doing for the past decade or so, to try and make the software easier to access than ever before, whether that be the learning editions, whether that making it more discoverable for Alias and VRED in terms of user experience and look and feel, or whether that be flexible, right? Those of you may or may not know that there are a number of ways to purchase and use the software, whether that be via subscription, flex or token flex, and this allows you, especially the flex, that flexibility to ramp up and ramp down when you need additional software in your projects. And as ever, the design blog, a single resource for all the information curated by Blake and the whole team, but a really great place if you want to see where everything is in terms of the updates for the software. For example, the student competition that the team are running at the moment and everything else. So recommend you to visit that on a regular basis, because there's always some great news on there, and it's a great font of information. So I mentioned before about the segue in the training and some of the work that we've been doing. What we've been doing in America for the past 6 months is really something called Screen to Machine, which is a partnership between ourselves and Autodesk, where we've been going on site at times, but actually in offices, whether it be in P9 or Detroit, to get people back into the classroom, right? To actually get people from different companies training on the software together, talking, experiencing the software with expert users, but also with other people to actually gain insights. And but also expanding the pipeline. So talking about how in a real world design situation, Alias and VRED can connect with Fusion or Maya, but also work with other supporting tools in the studio, such as Viscom or rendering tools. And what we have done in collaboration with Autodesk, and hats off to Michael Sagan, one of my good mates, chums in Autodesk, who's worked his cotton socks off to deliver this and to drive this forward, is we've created a list of, we think, bespoke courses for specific workflows, specific personas, so we can begin to get users up to speed quickly. Not a kind of shotgun approach, right, for the barn door, but basically lasered and targeted. What are we doing for Class A surfacing, body and white? Okay, how do we actually do the grey zone part? What about clay milling? What are we doing for sub-D interiors? And you can see that what we have here for deployed, what we're developing, and what we're actually working on currently. An example is, it's a training classroom, right? So you get in there, you have coffee, you do the training, you have lunch, and then you do the afternoon. So it sounds quite simple, but it's actually really back to basics, and something that we, one could argue that perhaps COVID sort of derailed this a little bit. But we're looking to get that back in the front and center of people's minds, but also begin to have walk-in centers, surfacing drop-in centers, not like a kind of like a rehab clinic, maybe a rehab for surfacing perhaps, but so you can actually just drop in and have a chat, understand, look at the new sub-D reform tools or whatever, or the latest XR stuff for VRED, and actually ask experts and understand what's going on. So I said we've run a number of classes here. We ran one in P9, which is the Autodesk sort of Advanced Technology Center in San Francisco. But critically, as I mentioned, it wasn't just customers there. There were some Autodesk Design XD people there, Jonathan Brown there, to gain insights as to how people use the software, right? So it's a kind of a two-way street. It's not just training the software, but it's understanding from customers how tools are being used in the design studio, how AI is changing the workflow, how Blender or Viscom or tools are being integrated to give insights to our to the Autodesk Alias and VRED design and development teams to better improve the product. So it's a real kind of symbiotic relationship that we're looking to build. And this is something we don't get with virtual training classes, right? Which is why we think this is really, really important. We also went back to the old Alias office in Detroit, where we actually ran a similar course, and this is more news to come on the Royal Oak office, but that was really really quite exciting moving forward. And last week, maybe was it last week I think, yes, we ran a course for Lucid at P&I. Key thing is we can customize it also for your studio and your users, right? It doesn't just have to be a generic, here's the reform retopo, here's NURBS. We can actually customize it for specific workflows and or specific tools, and of course some great feedback. And we're looking to deploy this globally, right? So take it out of America into Europe and into APAC. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to ourselves at Linkage or your Autodesk account rep, and we'll begin to set things up moving forward. In addition to that, we're also beginning to support Autodesk globally in their major accounts. So how can we actually manage and work with them to begin to roll out aspects of training or aspects of account support? And one example of that is really Class A migration. A lot of customers are moving from their legacy Class A software to have a more unified pipeline. We still pump it out into engineering at the end, but how can we actually speed up that design surface release, and how can we actually address that demographic issue of people who are retiring and legacy software users perhaps going into retirement? So, and with the groundswell of Alias users, how can we move all those into Class A? So we're hand-holding multiple customers at the moment over years to actually move their A-class teams from legacy to to Alias, to have a very simple and elegant pipeline. And this really allows us to allows customers to move faster, but this is also can be a blended approach, either on-site, virtual, or consistency. Critically, what we're doing now is moving that approach out into what we call mid-market or channel. So having the same level of attention and care and attention that we have with our big customers, and roll it out to customers. So there are big customers who maybe have 1 seat of Alias and VRED, or customers who have 10 seats of Alias and VRED. We're trying not to discriminate on size. So we want to kind of really, the ethos of actually having this kind of back to basics training where we have 6 or 10 people, Michael Sagan will understand the joke, and 10 people there in a room, so people can learn from one another. A small company maybe which has a seat of concept and design, VRED design, or a big company that has 10 seats of surface or whatever. So we're really looking to actually sort of get back to that grassroots approach, which is quite cool. We also develop software, right? And this is where I'm going to get into something which is really quite interesting. So we talk about pipeline and process with our customers, right? What we really want to do is to connect the tools to make them customers more efficient. It doesn't mean that we're kind of favoring one tool over the other. We're actually just having a pragmatic, practical discussion with customers about how can we make them more efficient? How can we make you more efficient? And how can we connect the tools? And one of the first tools that we've done is a data bridge, which is our Blender to Alias tool. Now, we've taken a few innovative approaches with this. One of them is its API first. What that means is, sounds quite complicated, but it's basically code at the API level where we're just connecting various API components, putting them in a black box, or putting them into a kind of a software as a service component that can reside on premise, on cloud, and really allows you to, as you can see here, transfer the data very, very quickly. And this is really different. This is different to what we would call a traditional data translation framework, because that takes a while to chunk and process. We've all had the situation where you're importing a file and you've got to make a cup of tea or coffee, and you come back and half an hour later the model's in there. So we've taken a very novel approach with this, and our technology partner here is CAD as code, and that tells you all you need to know. The mindset of what we're thinking here, where we're trying to redefine what CAD is. And if you think of it as a purely code at a code level, it allows us to do a lot of interesting things. So currently we have multiple proof of concepts underway with customers where they're evaluating this process, that they're commenting on just how fast it is. how accurate it is. You know, in Alias 2026.1, we now have a checker which allows us to identify non-manifold geometry, which has always been a bugbear when we're transferring sort of non-sub-D data into Alias, which will help here also. But you know, at the moment it's unidirectional between Alias, between Blender and Alias, and it works very, very, very well. On the roadmap in development, we have this bi-directional approach where we can move data back and forth. Customers are asking us to do that, so we're evaluating how we can do that. What are the benefits? Which capabilities need to be moved back? Again, we're doing a few studies with customers to understand that, and then the vision really is in time to, as you say, componentize this and put it into Autodesk platform services so everyone can take advantage of that. And that's really what we mean by an API first approach. So we can actually be very smart and very intentional in what we're doing, but the benefit for the customer is the speed of the data translation and the very clever approach that ourselves and CADIS Code are taking to connect those geometrical components and be rebuilding the geometry in effect, as opposed to translating the geometry. We're also applying this to a variety of other engagements that we're having with customers. One of them, which is what we're doing around our PLM and PDM space. PDM connectivity is critically important to our customers. We still have the issue of I just step and JT and never the twain will meet. So we have a number of projects where we're understanding how we can actually take that SaaS API first approach and implement it with our customers' enterprise-wide product data management and product lifecycle management systems. That could be Dassault, could be PTC Windchill, could be Siemens NXX, it could be or Fusion, of course. So, you know, we have a number of initiatives underway now to understand how we can actually, I would say, I don't use the word lightly, but revolutionize how we're going to change that engagement at the data level to get that data flowing as quickly as possible into, or from design into our engineering tools. And our vision is to become a strategic partner for our customers. The wider picture, of course, is what we do as Mechdyne is our enterprise solutions. Now, as I've said before, Mechdyne's probably a company that you use, but you've probably never really heard of. And you know, we enable discovery by allowing people easy access to data, right? You know, whether it be via a headset or via a Powerwall, via a cave, or via a, you know, if you've been to Las Vegas and you've seen the dome, you know, really unique display capabilities. Mechdyne didn't do that, but you understand the concept of innovative display capabilities, not just for, you know, for design studios, but for visualization also. So, you know, we have a lot of domain experience, whether it be complex and mixed AV and XR, merging a Vario with a big LCD or LED screen, with a Powerwall, with a cave, with a, you know, maybe a kind of a mobile device. You know, how do we make that work seamlessly for the customer? And those are really critical components that make the experience seamless. We've all been in situations where design managers really get a bit annoyed if it's taking too long to get a review up and running, or the Powerwall fails. So, you know, that's where we deliver help at the back end also, as well as integrating all the tools, right? So they work seamlessly and pretty much plug and play, drop and drag. And that's also a kind of a desire that we want to bring to this offering as well. So it's not just, you know, VRED with a headset, is actually VRED with a headset on a Powerwall, VRED with a headset around the clay and a Powerwall, and everything combined, working seamlessly together, but critically connected together also, as well as experts on site to get the best out of that hit, and proof of concept. So we have a great demo, which is a couple of years old now, of an iPad early XR walking around a clay with you know, with VRED on there also. So there's a lot of custom development that we do, not just at the software perspective for Alias and VRED and AI, but also at the kind of implementation and user case scenario from a display perspective. And of course, these are an example of our customers. We all know them, and we kind of, you know, we're pretty familiar with them. We've also beginning to solve this data funnel problem, right? You know, I mentioned before about IGES and STEP and, you know, which sort of formats, and we've created a neutral data viewing format, we call it VRED 3D and VRED XR. And this really, the objective here is to address the issue of multiple data types coming in, and then having to take a while to actually sort out that data, organize that data, align that data, curate that data, and then display that data on a Powerwall or a headset. So we have a native home-built viewing system, which is pretty slick, which allows anyone, anywhere, to view data from engineering, from design, from building infrastructure, factory planning, etc., at the press of a button, whether it be on a Powerwall or whatever. And this is really, something which we're really having a great discussion with customers where we can add the extra value. So it's not just the software, Alias and VRED out of the box. It's not just the tools and capabilities or the Powerwalls or headsets. It's now bringing all that together to allow everyone to view that data anywhere on any device in real time. So in summary, I'm just rattling through now because I know I'm pressed for time, and I can hear Freddie sort of breathing heavily at me. So in summary, okay, fantastic releases of 2026.1 and 2026.2 Alias and VRED, right? I'm sure you've got them. I'm sure you're using them. If you haven't, please download them and use them. If the learning editions, just to play with them, because the guys have done a fantastic job in both products. And you really need to see what the teams have done. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it completely will improve your process overnight. I guarantee that. We've made it easier. Sorry, Autodesk have made it easier for people to access it, right? It's free, it's discoverable, it's flexible. There's no excuse now not to get knees deep or knee deep in this software and really roll up your sleeves and really begin to play with it and use it. Ourselves as Linkage are supporting not just customers, but Autodesk to deliver this software, to deliver the training, to deliver bespoke capability on site, but also connect the tools for our customers to make their pipelines more efficient, and to actually get the data out faster and to make the products, or get the products to market a lot faster. And again, implementing these benefits, right? Connected, knowledge, prediction, and ease of use. These are the key drivers which our software are really beginning to fulfill, and our services are beginning to fill, whether it be our screen to machine, whether it be the very enterprise-centric approach from Mechdyne in terms of allowing democracy of data for all users, or whatever, or as we said before, the SaaS approach with with our Blender tool, which we believe is a unique way, which will begin to roll out to other sort of bottlenecks in the design process moving forward. And finally, once again, thank you to Rainer and the guys at Genesis for the use of their car. Fantastic car, and it's a great image. And of course, it's VRED, and it's absolutely fantastic. And without that, thank you very much for listening. And I'll hand back to Freddie for any questions and answers.
Super. Thank you very much, Phil. Yeah, we do have about 7 or 8 minutes now for Q&A. So if you'd like to ask a question, just tap it into the Q&A box on your screen and we will put that to Phil shortly. I can see we've got a couple here loaded up already, so thank you for sending those in. Phil, you're going to be absolutely blown away and shocked. We've got a question on AI. Who would have thought it? The question is, I'm interested in the Alias AI tools, as I think they could really help our business. Who should I talk to about them?
Yes, well, I mean, if I would talk to your Autodesk representative. So whoever the person is, if you email, if you email me, I can then send his email to, or her email to the Autodesk account manager or the account team. So reach out to your Autodesk person, or even, if you go to the blog, the Studio Design blog, there'll be an email address on there to do that. Or at the very least, if you email Barry Kimball, so barry.kimball@autodesk.com, send him an email. He can get in touch with you with that. So barry.kimball@autodesk.com, and he can actually put you in contact with the right person.
So Barry's your man. Okay. There's actually a follow-up here. Are you guys at Linkage working on any AI tools internally?
Yes, we are. We've got some really cool, interesting AI tools that we're working on. I can't really go into too much detail because some of them are specific with customers. Yeah, we are, and some really great tools, right? I mean, AI is changing, and you can see the work that the Autodesk Alias and VRED dev teams have done, and the Navasto and the other teams that are on AI for Alias. It's really fantastic. So yeah, I mean, it's really going to change how we do how we deliver design, but critically insights, right? The ability to actually have robust engineering insights into Alias data, so we can actually make informed design decisions going into the next stage of the design process, into engineering, without having to wait for days or weeks. That's going to be phenomenally game changing for getting our products out to market.
Good stuff. There's a bit more of a technical question here, I guess, Phil. How do you ensure accurate real to virtual calibration when using HMDs?
Oh, that's a bit outside my area of expertise. Unfortunately, I am a VRED user, but I'm not a VRED expert or a VRED PM. Again, if you send me those questions, won't you, Freddie?
Yes.
Well, I will forward that to one of the guys in the VRED team, probably Pascal, and he'll be able to or one of our experts at Linkage, and get back to you and support that. But that's outside my domain of expertise, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll get those questions out to you by carrier pigeon very shortly.
Great, thank you.
Next question is there a trial version of Form Explorer?
Again, if you reach out to to your Autodesk account manager, he or she will be able to guide you through that process, or to actually talk about how to use the tools and where they're applicable. That's kind of the recommended thing, because there are lots of not complexities, but there's a lot of stuff that you probably need to talk about to understand how it works and why it works. So definitely reach out to your account representative, and he or she will actually guide you through the next steps to understand what your requirements are, what you want to do, etc., etc.
Good stuff. One audience member asks, how can we get access to the Blender bridge, and can we work with Linkage on this?
Absolutely, yes and yes. So again, I'll be the guy to manage that. So if that in that email that you've got, or the message you've got from that person, Freddie, when you send that over, I can reply, and I can actually set that up, and also I can connect with him on working with Linkage, or working with us, on anything that they may want to do, training, support, software, etc.
Got it. Another question for you, Phil. Is it possible to cherry pick tools from other 3D modeling softwares? Bit of a broad one.
Is it? It is a very broad question.
Yeah.
Is it? Well, I mean, that's a very expansive question. Yes, okay. Let's take it back. I'm getting back into my development stuff. Technically, yes, but then selection is the key, right? Some tools select in different ways. Conceptually, you could take a tool in Blender that works in a particular way, or a tool in CATIA that works in a particular way, and have a similar tool that works in Alias in a similar way, but it wouldn't be the same, because geometry definition, hybrid modeling kernels, selection processes and approaches, permanent selection states, etc. So theoretically, yes. I mean, it's an interesting question. There'd be something to explore. I mean, I like the idea. It's like kind of like taking the best tools in all the products and then putting them together. I mean, it might make a Frankenstein piece of software if you did that.
I quite like the sound of that, actually. Straightforward one. I imagine this is a yes or no. Does Alias VR support the MetaQuest 3 headset? Do you know?
Alias VR. Do you mean view in VR? I'd need to check on that. I'm not too sure it does, and the reason is, if what we've implemented with live reference, the team have implemented with live reference, is the ability to get the Alias data immediately and quickly into VRED, right? So once it's in VRED, then you can have your full XR experience with your avatars, with your multiple sessions, and all the capabilities that we have in VRED, and can be used by an Alias user. So again, I'll double check on that. I don't think it is, but then that's not to say that you can't take experience of it and have a greater experience of it and better experience by actually using a live reference workflow to get your Alias session into VRED, then have your collaborative XR session with your multiple people, multiple headsets, and of course any changes to that Alias data are updated almost immediately in real time in VRED. So there's kind of, so you see any updates, any geometry that has changed, any materials that have changed. So I think the benefits of actually having an XR session in VRED probably far outweigh so that capability in Alias.
We have come to the top of the hour, but I do want to get one more question in just about linkage specifically. During the presentation, Phil, one of your slides mentioned that now more than ever, customers need a whole spectrum of support and consulting alongside more agile tools. Is that something that's been lacking in the market until now? Can you just expand on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a place for a niche partner, right? I mean, all I've done for 25 years is surfacing, whether it be with Alias or Dassault, right? And all the guys at Linkage have done is surfacing and everything. But sometimes resellers, there's nothing wrong with this. Yeah, they focus on other tools and other areas, right? And that's perfectly fine. What we want to do is we want to be solely focused on the design space, digital design space, in the domain of design and surfacing and visualization in the automotive and in the product space. And that allows us to be domain experts, right? Both in training and consulting, in delivery and understanding the problems, but also identifying best practice, right? If we go into customer A and we see that they're perhaps using a process that's maybe 5 years old, we can take our, quarter of a century of knowledge, or when you combine it, probably hundreds of years of knowledge, and we can say to a customer, actually, you know what, you should think about doing this, you should think about doing that. It's not like we're kind of first day in the job. And I think that's something that we're looking to expand, and then we're looking to roll out, and then you have that level of trust with the customers. We've been working with many people on this call. We've known them for 20-25 years, since we were knee high to a grasshopper, right? So we built that level of trust. So when we say something, it's usually right, and it's born out of all that experience. And this holistic approach means that if we go into a customer and the customer says, "Oh, Phil, got a real problem," or "Dave, I've got a real problem," or whatever, "Michael, I need this software. I don't know how to use it, but I need to get the project done by Friday. Can you help?" And we'll go, "Well, actually, yeah, we'll put 2 consultants on site for you. They'll be on the site tomorrow. They'll get the work done. Or we can also install the software and train you on the software." So it's almost as if the customer is going to, maybe going to I'm going to an Indian restaurant tonight, going to an Indian restaurant and looking for the menu and going, "You know what, I might have that Balti, or I might have that Madras. You know what, no, I'm going to have some poppadoms." It allows them to choose what they want to have, as befits the situation or problem they find themselves in. And I think that's the choice, right, that we want to give customers. What do you want to do today, Mr. Customer? You want people on site? Do you want training? Do you want software? Do you want bespoke code? Do you want us to plug your process gaps? And having a one-stop shop for that, I think, really makes life easier for customers. And of course, it kind of really ensures us as an SI, a systems integrator for a customer, a bit like your big Accentures and those big SI companies. We want to deliver that value to the customer from a single source, that source being Linkage.
One-stop shop, I like that. Okay, well, I've taken us over a few minutes, but producer Matilda, we just have a quick whistle-stop tour of what's going on at CDN through the course of 2026. As you'd imagine, plenty to whip through. Digital tools, we had a survey go out at the end of last year. The results are out now. You can download a summary, or if you're a subscriber, you can get the full fat report at your leisure. Plenty of events to come to as well, in person, not just virtual. Back in Milan, Beijing and Detroit towards the end of the year. And then closing out 2026, it's the People Awards. We're back at Old Billingsgate. Very excited for that. And you can get involved through the Q&R code on the slide there.
I just plug for that, say, Fred, that was a great event last year you guys ran. Absolutely fantastic. It was really, really worth going. For anyone who hasn't been, get yourselves there. It's the event of the year.
Don't listen to me, listen to him. He knows
after
what he's talking
AIF,
about.
Of course. Sorry, AIF is the event of the year. That's the second.
Back in Darmstadt, Phil?
Back in Darmstadt, yeah. It's going to be an even bigger and better event. What I'm hearing from the guys, we've got some great tech. They got some great tech to show, some really cool stuff. So looking forward to being there. And I think what you're going to see is going to blow a lot of people away. I think people are going to be really, really impressed. If you thought 2026.1 and 26.2 from Alias and VRED we're good. Wait till you see what's coming from and what the guys will show at AIF.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be there reporting on the ground. Car Design Review, we are doing print. This is our beloved annual yearbook. You can buy that now with a little discount as well. Lucky you. If you enjoyed this live stream, we've got more like it on a selection of topics on the screen there. Do register. It's free. You can get involved. We've also, I don't think we have a slide on this, but we've actually got a monthly podcast coming out as well. I'll be joined here in the studio with my lovely colleagues, James and Lucy. And we're going to look back over design trends, launches, and just generally have a nice chat. That's all for now, though. So thank you very much, Phil, for sharing your insight as always. And to Linkage, of course, for sponsoring the show. So thank you all for tuning in, and we hope to see you at the next one. It's goodbye for now.
Great. Thanks, Freddie. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.